So this is another great example of how Guthrie crams so much information in just a few short measures. And he does it in such a musical way that you might not necessarily pick out, you may pick out one idea might stand out to you. But there's so many concepts being used here, and we're going to point all of those out so that you can at least hear those concepts in context and understand what's going on and pull those little pieces out so you can use them in your own playing. It just makes it a little easier to break this stuff down for yourself so that you could take little chunks and start exploring with them. So the first idea is something that we talked about before, which was he starts this whole thing out walking up an arpeggio. Then he starts bending notes. That arpeggio, we'll just real quickly, it's just a G major 7 arpeggio starting on the 7th. Right? So you know what that arpeggio is. And he then gets to the 17th fret of the B string, bends that up a whole step, and then back down, and he's hitting it a few times. But instead of sliding up to that note, which he could have done, he likes to bend these notes, which just sounds so musical on a guitar. Then he goes to the 19th fret and he does the same thing, but this time he bends up a step and a half to the 21st fret, or the 22nd fret, then down a half step to the 21st fret, and then he lands back on that 19th fret, all on the B string. But he's only holding that 19th fret on the B string, and he's bending through all those pitches. So you have, right, and you can test yourself by playing those actual notes to see if you hit the pitches correctly. So that's the first thing to do. Again, we've talked about this a few times. Just sit on a few notes every once in a while and bend them a few different pitches and play around with the tones, and it's very vocalist. Now the second thing he gets into is he starts walking down a scale, and we're over a D major 7 chord, and he's just walking down a D major scale. Nothing really impressive, but it's the way he does it. Again, he doesn't just walk down the scale. He skips a few notes every once in a while, but he bends a note from behind a pitch that's in the scale. So he either bends a half step or a whole step. So the first bend is on the 14th fret, bending up to the 15th fret, so it's a half step bend. Then he goes down to the G string, and that was on the B string. On the G string, instead of playing the 16th fret, he plays the 14th fret and bends that up to the 16th fret, so it's a whole step bend. But again, he plays the note first that he's going to bend to. So he plays that 16th fret, goes to the 14th fret, bends it up to the 16 and back down. So up a whole step, back down. So, and he just walks down that, and you see the half step and whole steps bends. Now the cool thing you can do with this is explore with this on your own. Say you take a C major scale, so we stay with no sharps or flats. Right, really, really simple. And just play a note in front, then play a note below it, and bend up to it. So that's obviously a half step bend from the F to the E. Go down to the next string if you want. You could skip notes, you don't have to do every note. Then you go to the 13th fret and the 12th fret on the B string. Another half step bend. Then you go to the 12 and the 10 on the G string. That's going to be a whole step bend. You could do all the notes. You know, you could do a scale on one string. But the point is to start getting that sound in your own playing. And then mix it up to where, again, Guthrie doesn't do it for a whole scale. He does it just a little section. So if you start playing around with right, and you don't have to just, do the way he was using it, again, was walking down a scale, but you could sit on a note and then just get into whatever scale you want to do. All right, so the next concept Guthrie gets into is he plays over another altered chord. This time he's playing over an E7 sharp 9, sharp 5 chord. Right? And it's basically the alterations are the sharp 9 and the sharp 5. And what you want to do over a chord like this is you want to get some of those altered tones in there a lot of times. And a really good way to do that is to play the 7th mode of melodic minor, which is called the altered scale. And the way Guthrie works into this is he starts doing, he mixes a lot of things together again, and we'll just touch on that. He mixes pentatonic stuff, then he gets into major scale stuff, but he skips a note in the pentatonic scale. So instead of playing that note, he just skips that and gets right to the B string. Then he gets into the major scale. Then he starts getting into the chromatic stuff. Then he does a little pivot thing where he slides down a half step, and then he pivots off the B string. So you have... And then he gets into some chromatic stuff again. But you hear that one point where it switches into something a little different, and that's the melodic minor. And what it is, it's basically this scale, starting on the 12th fret. Right? That's just one position of it. But it's 12 on the E string, 12, 13, 15, then 11, 13, 15, then 12, 14, 15, then 12, 13, 15, then 13, 15, and 12, 13, 15. So. And Guthrie goes down in kind of an arpeggio form. Right? And it's just a really cool scale that outlines some of those altered tones. Another thing you can do, again, real quickly, is you can mix what we talked about before, that bending half-step things when you're walking down the scale. So you can do something like... Right? So now you're just taking that scale and using that concept of... And you can see how those two concepts, you can combine concepts and get some really cool ideas. All right, so for this last concept in this lick, this is actually one of my favorite ways Guthrie plays chromatic ideas. This is completely different than any of the other ideas you've heard him play. It's just a way of skipping strings and twisting notes and patterns, and it just sounds so cool. But what it is he's just going from this 13th fret on the B string all the way down to the 5th fret chromatically. Now he plays that 6th and 5th fret on the B string, actually on the 10th and 9th fret of the G string. But it's linearly from the 13th to the 5th fret. It's just every note sequentially down. But he does it in a way where he's doing these patterns. So on the D string, he plays 2 notes. Then he skips and he plays the 13th fret on the B string. So it's 2 notes on one string, then 1 on the next. Then he plays 2 notes again on the low string. And then he slides between 2 notes on the B string. So on the B string, it's 1 note, then 2 notes, and then the third time he goes 3 notes. And on the D string, it's only 1 note. So he's switching around. It's not just 2 notes on one string, 2 on the next, 2 on this. It's just a really cool mixing of the pattern. So you have... Right? It's a really, really cool pattern. But if you follow those notes on the B string, you'll see he's just going down chromatically. Now, a cool thing you can do with this in experimenting is take it in different scales and just take that sequence of 2, then 1, then 2, then 2, then 1, then 3, if that makes sense. And you can come up with something like this. So I'll think A minor pentatonic here, but I'll throw in that flat 5 and maybe the major third, right? So you could have something like, right? Something like that. So you have, right? It's that similar pattern of going up 2 notes, then 1 note on a skipped string, then you have the 2 notes again and 2 notes, then you have 1 note, then 3 notes, then you have that little pivot thing he does, then you just kind of walk down the blues scale, and I slid into the minor third, major third, into the dominant 7. So that's just, again, a real quick idea of how you could take that concept and start using it in scales you already know.